Santa Fe. I'm Carlene, and welcome to Living Santa Fe at the State Capitol Roundhouse.
It's a great place to be here today.
It is. Nobody's here. It's the first time I've been here when I could get around.
Yes, it's easy to get around now. Definitely not a lot of people.
You sound like Barbara Jordan.
You know what? I really admire Barbara Jordan. She was one of my heroes, one of my sheroes. And I said, when I grow up, I want to be like Barbara Jordan. So I hope I'm walking in her footsteps.
You're very close with your voice, I'll tell you. Let's see, now you're a state representative from Albuquerque.
That's correct. I represent House District 28.
House District 28. And what does that include?
So that includes the Northeast Heights from a street called Morris up to Tramway.
Right.
The outside borders may go as far as Lomas and all the way up to a street called Lowell. That's almost till you get to Paseo del Norte. So it's a pretty big district as a part of the redistricting.
And how long have you been in
The legislature?
legislature?
So my first day was June 20th, 2021.
Ah, so you're kind of new.
I'm a little bit new, but I'm not new to the legislature and the process. I have been advocating up here for many issues affecting women and children and vulnerable populations for many, many years.
Now, you mentioned that you had worked, did you work in Washington?
So I worked in Washington when I went to school at Howard University. So I was a clerk, an intern, and that was at the time when Congressman Louis Stokes was there. And so he was with the with the Congressional Black Caucus, as was Barbara Jordan. So that's when I actually got a chance to meet her and be a part of sitting in on meetings and conferences and the big caucus dinner at that point in time. So that was quite a highlight for me.
Right. And then when you work over in Washington, you get a taste of what it's like in government. Government is not easy.
It's not easy. It's a lot of work, and it's really, really all about how do you get people to work together? And even if they have differences, how do you get each one of them to give a little bit so that we can actually move forward in an area that's important to a lot of people?
Now, we're over here today to discuss an issue. I don't want to call it gun control.
Right.
I'd like to refer to it as reform, because Americans seem not to like control. They want to have reform, but not control.
That's right.
What's your take on that?
So one of the things I've been looking at primarily as I look at guns and firearms, mine has been focused on gun safety, and particularly with respect to children. And I want to make sure that adults who decide to have guns or firearms in their homes, that they put them up, keep them in a safe place, and keep them out of the hands of minors. Because what we've seen far too often is when minors have access to guns, it causes problems.
We have had some incidents here in New Mexico of people that know better with guns, left them out, their child grabbed it. I want to be like my dad. A policeman killed his brother. We've had cases of men, jealous men, drunk men that don't like their wife. They take out a gun and, well, I'll get rid of her. This is pretty normal anymore.
Well, I hope that that is not normal. And what I'm expecting is people who have the responsibility, like me and my colleagues, that we're doing something about that. And what is that going to look like going forward in the future? You know, one of the most horrific crimes, of course, occurred on August 13th. It was a Friday at lunchtime on the school campus of Washington Middle School. And that's when a 13-year-old boy by the name of Benny Hartgrove was shot in front of all of his colleagues.
Right.
And it was because the shooter had access to a family firearm and it wasn't kept in a safe place. So that's something that we absolutely need to watch out for. And you mentioned the young 3-year-old who shot his brother. So because there was a gun, we don't know all the facts that was laying on the table that should not have been there. And so there are 2 families that have been hurt. all because adults were not being careful.
Yes, and a few years ago we had a young woman and her husband, I believe she worked in somewhere around here, and he shot her in the car and then shot himself. They were married. She was a talented woman.
She was a performer. I remember that, an
The-
entertainer.
The whole family was affected, both sides.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Now, last year, you put some bills forth.
Yes.
Can you kind of give me an idea what kind of bills they were?
So I'll first start talking about House Bill 9. And House Bill 9 had to do with gun safety, something that we've been talking about now. And so the whole focus was on making sure that, that individuals who have guns in their home, particularly when minors are coming into the home, that they're put away in a safe place. So what we did is we were very careful not to describe what does safe storage look like, because it could look different from a family who is maybe not as well financially as other families. And what gun storage could look like for them could be grandma's cosmetic case that's locked up where grandma keeps the key. And for somebody else, it could be a secure storage safe because they can afford that. But we said in your home and in your culture, what is safety? And so that's what we were looking at. And we wanted to make sure that adults were keeping their firearms safe. We were not restricting guns. We were not involved with the term gun control. If you felt like you wanted to have many guns in your home, that's fine.
Sure.
But your responsibility is to keep them safe and away from minors.
Okay, that was House Bill 9.
House Bill 9.
Okay, what other ones did you
So
have?
the other one was called an omnibus crime bill, and that was House Bill 68. And in there, what we looked at is the number of crimes that are already on the books, and maybe we needed to increase them. And what else did we need to do to make sure that people are safe? So those are the bills that we looked at, and those are the bills. House Bill 68 actually was passed. House Bill 9 did not pass. I will tell you that something else that I put through that it would be great to talk about is I put in a memorial. And a memorial looking at how do we keep more of our law enforcement individuals on the police force or in law enforcement. Right now, law enforcement can leave at 20 years, but we want them to stay an extra 5 years because we really do need them. So I'm working very closely with the Albuquerque Police Department, with the former Attorney General for the state of state in New Mexico, but the federal Attorney General. That's Damon Martinez, and we are putting together a plan, talking to individuals, what is that going to look like, so that we are not short of police. So when you call or anybody else calls in the community, there will be somebody to answer, and that's incredibly important. We want people to always feel safe.
Okay, those bills all make sense. You were defeated.
Well,
I mean, you weren't personally defeated.
I wasn't personally defeated. The only bill that didn't pass was the Gun Safety Act.
Okay.
And so the omnibus crime bill passed, the House memorial passed. And I also want to tell you that in looking at children, and we look at guns, and then I'll come back and talk about what we were doing. I also passed a memorial that looked at how do we have mental wellness rooms in schools? Because if you find a student like we saw at Washington Middle School, and then students observing their own colleague being shot and killed right in front of them, that really does affect their mental health. And so what we want to do is if there's a room where where students need to get together, sit down, talk about what they're feeling so that they are not involved in horrific acts. These mental health rooms are going to be important. Right now, the whole state of New Mexico, we have one mental health room specifically designed for that purpose. It's at El Dorado High School.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yes.
That's a great idea.
Yes, we need to do that. So I did not fail. I think that what happened is that
The
we
legislature
the people.
failed.
That's right, when we didn't pass the gun safety act.
Okay.
But I don't fail. I keep pushing.
I know, I can tell. Okay, a few years ago I was over here because we come over here and we do shows with the legislature. I was doing a show, I believe, with Lucky Varela and Larry Larinaga.
Yes.
Both were very good friends of mine. I walked in here and I saw rifles. I saw guys with guns on their hip, and I went over to Sarah Grace. I said, Sarah, what the heck is going on in here? She said, Hita, that's a gun issue. And I said, well, why are they running around with guns? I don't know, but I'll tell you, I was intimidated, and I don't get intimidated easily. I didn't stay in there long. But then you got a bill through that nobody could bring a gun in.
Correct.
Okay.
And that was important. If you look at what happened at our national capital,
Oh.
and the overtake of the Capitol there, and the direct effect on how is our democracy working. So one of the things that we want to do is in the state of New Mexico, we want to make sure that people feel safe when they're coming to the place where we are trying to make good policies and protect a lot of people. So it was in the best interest of everybody in terms of safety and our operations that we don't have guns coming into the state capitol.
Okay. But a few days I'm reading the paper, and I see where the issue comes up again. We got some touchy issues. We've got Roe versus Wade coming up. And some of the people over here seem to think that these women might go on a rage and hurt somebody. So they think they should carry, if they have a concealed weapons, they think they should bring them back in.
Shall we talk about that?
Yes, I'd like to.
Let's look at that issue practically. So there's the conversation of, well, we're going to change whether or not women can have abortion care and access to abortion when they are looking out for themselves and for their own bodies and for their own families. But on the same hand, those same individuals are saying, you can't make me wear a mask, you can't make me get a vaccination. So where is the middle road there? On one hand, they want to absolutely attack women and say, well, you can't make this decision for yourself. But then on the other hand, when it comes to vaccinations and making sure that our public is safe, they're also saying, you can't make me take a vaccine. So I think we need to really think about that. And whether or not women are going to go on a rampage because they can't get an abortion, I think that that's a little bit far in terms of the thought process, because we have places and platforms in place that we're getting ready if that indeed does happen. We look at the state of New Mexico, for example. This is a place where we are going to be taking care of women. And right now, the state legislature, the people who work in the policy-making positions right now are taking care of women. And if that means that we need to bring other women in from states where those legislatures are not being as responsible as we are, then that's okay. We'll do that. But I think that to say that, oh, women are going to go on a rampage if they can't get an abortion or have access to abortion care, I think we won't see that. I am not expecting that one.
You know, I was around when the first back in the 70s, when Roe versus Wade was there, and Republican women and Democrat women, they were out there really pushing for it. So now we're planning on overturning a 50-year law. That doesn't make sense to me.
Well, one of the things that's going to happen, we have to take a look at how it's going to be affected. So we're looking at a federal application across the board. So right now, in any state where you can find the services, you can actually have access to abortion care and reproductive health care. And so what the Supreme Court decision is going to do is to push that access back down to the states. So they're saying, states, you make this decision. We're not going to make this decision for you. Well, one thing that I can say again is that New Mexico is being one of the most responsible states in the union right now, because we are saying, women, we're not going to interfere with you and your life and the decisions that are made between you and your doctor and your family, which is really good. And I'm so proud of our my legislative colleagues for moving in that direction, but also the advocates who have been pushing for that for a long time.
So can you get the bill through to stop people from bringing their guns in? Will you have to present a new bill on that?
So
Or will
in
you
terms
be-
of not coming into the state, the capital, I believe that is going to stay in place. What I will be pushing and presenting again during the legislative session is House Bill 9. So some version of House Bill 9. I don't know if it'll have that same number again, but it is important that we take the step to make sure that adults are responsible for the firearms and for the guns that they decide to maintain in their homes, and keeping them away and out of the hands of youth, unless they're involved in some sort of competition or games in terms of like a 4-H club, for example, that it is appropriate where they would be shooting, and that there is absolutely oversight, but not where you're going to be taking away someone's life.
Okay, I want to mention that here in this place, whenever I've been over here, they do have a great deal of security. We have state police here, sometimes we have military here. Those people will be able to bring their guns in.
Absolutely. Those who are in their official position and making sure that everyone is remaining safe and a part of law enforcement will absolutely be able to have their firearms with them.
So follow the rules like everybody else is following.
Absolutely. That is what we want to see happen, and we want to keep the people in New Mexico safe.
Have you ever thought about a referendum? Letting it go to the will of the people.
So the will of the people in terms of bringing a gun into the state capitol?
For gun control, period.
So that's a great question, and let me tell you one of the things that we did do. So we had a big town hall, a crime town hall in my district. And what was important is that we brought together all of the people who would be important for making that decision. So we brought the FBI, we brought the law enforcement from the city of Albuquerque, we brought the judiciary there. And then we brought together a man by the name of Angel Garcia. And what Angel does is make sure that people don't repeat their lives in crime and that they stay out of the criminal process. And so bringing them all together, and then we brought people from the community, and the room was packed. And it was not only packed, we had an overflow room so that we could talk about how do we keep people safe. And the biggest issue was they wanted to make sure that we are making good decisions, not infringing upon their Second Amendment rights, but then how do we make those decisions about what needs to be taken care of. And so what we looked at is that why would, the question that came up more and more often than not, was why would an 18-year-old need a high-capacity rifle or a firearm that was a high-capacity firearm? And so there was no reason, based upon the people who were there and present and the questions that we received, that would need to happen. Those types of firearms were primarily designed in a war effort where you are defending an entire country. And so why would an 18-year-old need that? So the question is, how do we now get the legislature to act in the manner in which they need to act? But they're not taking away anybody's access to firearms, but when you're waiting until you're mature enough to handle what absolutely needs to be handled, if that's the direction that you go in. And then why do you need those types of firearms? What would be the reason? And what are you hearing?
Oh, I read all the opinions in the paper, in the Journal, and in the New Mexican, and the Rio Grande Sun, which is great. And one guy said, he wrote this great letter. He says, take all the AK-47s and AR-15s and send them over to the Ukraine and give them to the Ukrainians. And I thought that was a pretty good idea, you know, because we don't have any business with those kind of guns.
No, there's no logical reason why you would absolutely need to have those, other than some people say, well, it's my right, I've got a Second Amendment right. Well, but people also have a right to live and enjoy their lives. Yeah. And so,
look at that. I have a gun.
Okay.
For protection.
Yes.
Okay? I've done skeet. I've hunted even. I'm bird hunting. I decided, no more bird hunting, no more hunting, period. I know what a gun will do. And these guns are worse than just a regular gun. They had an expert on the other day talking about this Uvalde incident. They could not even recognize those children. They had to recognize them by their shoes. Their bodies were torn to pieces. Yeah. Now, you look into the eyes of people, And you see what these kids, that hollow stare that you have after you die, the eyes of their parents, the eyes of their family, sad, the eyes of policemen, anger, rage. It's all there. And these two boys, 10 days before Uvalde, they were in Buffalo. A white nationalist goes into a grocery store and kills 10 black people, older people, for no reason. I don't get it.
Well, we can't really understand why people have this disaffinity or a dislike for people based on the color of their skin and where they grew up, when there is so much that is sometimes being put before them that shouldn't be, so that they don't get to think rationally about what is being presented. So what we have to do is to make sure that before we're selling guns, firearms, particularly in any case, that we're doing an absolutely good program of background checks and making sure that people are mentally well to have firearms. One of the things that I did early on before I became a legislator is that I was working with the private investigator bill and securities, people who are providing security services for various businesses. And so at some level, you get to carry a gun on those premises. So one of the things that was important to me and the people who were working with me is that before we would allow someone to be able to carry a gun in that capacity, that they would have to go through a mental examination and background check to make sure that they could carry a gun on those premises and that it would be used for the purposes of making sure that protecting people and not for harming people when there was no reason to do so.
Well, it's been young boys. What are we doing with our boys? These two boys, 18-year-old kids, probably disenfranchised, maybe bullied, problems at home, what's wrong with me, what's wrong with them. There are so many issues. It is a mental issue. And we have red flags. I don't know. As a parent, you can see changes in your kids, I think.
I think so. So it's both. It's a combination of mental health. How do we address that, and how do we get more and more mental health counselors, especially for kids? And then the other item is it is a legislative asset and aspect that we have to be involved in. So once we're put in the position for making good policies and good laws that will protect everyone, so it's a combination of making sure that we have the policies in place that will protect people and that we don't have people who don't have the mental capacity to be utilizing and having access to a firearm to have that access. So it's a combination of the two, and we do need to come to some resolution. I'm expecting during this 2023 legislative session that that's going to happen.
I watched the Queen's Jubilee. Thousands of people were out there cheering, having the best time in the world. There were no incidents. We can't do that in this country anymore.
Well, we can, and we should. So I'm never going to say we can't do that. So I still have faith in moving forward, that we're going to get the legislative team, our Senate, our House of Representatives, both at the state level and on the federal level, to understand that your responsibility once you get into these positions is to make sure that you are keeping everyone within our state, within our federal government, wherever they are, that we're keeping them safe. I believe in this process, and I think we're going to see some changes.
Well, I've seen a lot in this country, and we've come through everything. Good Lord, World War II, Vietnam, South Korea, riots in Los Angeles and Mississippi, Alabama. We've managed to get through all this. We've developed some of the best, most beautiful things in this world. We have highly intelligent people. And why should we go down back into the 1700s.
We shouldn't. And I'm expecting that not to happen. So even in the 1700s, we didn't see the massive
No.
killings like we do now.
No.
And so what is it that we are allowing to give access to our children that is affecting their ability to make good decisions? So I think that that's what we need to make sure that we're looking at. What are your children watching on a daily basis? And what are they listening to? So parents, again, that's a responsibility on your hands. And so you too have a responsibility like the legislature does, and like our courts do, and like we all do working together. So I think it's all about coming back to a responsibility at the level in which you are. Parents at theirs, legislative at our responsibility, governors, presidents, all at their responsibilities. So that's what we're going to be working toward going forward.
What do you think about social media?
Social media is good to get information out so that I could tell you that, oh, there's going to be a tornado coming, make sure that you don't come up here, or there's a fire roaring that we don't have control of. I mean, those things are good, but we need to make sure that they're used in the best interest of people and not for items that are not true and that create havoc within our community. So those are the things that we need to be careful of. Social media, we can't blame it totally on everything. Again, parents, what's your responsibility for your children? Legislatures, what's your responsibility for where you live? And then for our leaders and our governors and our presidents, what's your responsibility for making sure you sign that legislation?
Representative, besides being a legislator, what else do you do?
So I run a nonprofit law center, and my focus is on helping vulnerable populations to make sure they have access to the resources and to the judicial system as any other person does. And it shouldn't be based on the fact of whether or not they have money or not have money. So for example, there are a couple of things that I'd like to tell you about that I look at my nonprofit law center. This state, unfortunately, has the highest rate of domestic violence in the entire country. So what do you do? What does a woman do when she wants to leave? Sometimes she can't because she says, I have a financial need and the only way I can get it is from my abuser. Well, what I've been doing is working with credit unions and trying to get them to form something called a CUSO, a credit union service organization. That's when you get credit unions to come together to work on a process where there might otherwise be risk, but the risk is then spread out. And so they formed something called CU Safe, and that's Survivor Alliance for Financial Empowerment. And what that will do is to give individuals who are survivors of domestic violence up to a line of credit, not to exceed $10,000, but the good part about it is at 9.9% interest. That's a lower interest rate than we've been fighting for here in the state legislature. We've only gotten 36%, but we want to help people who are ready to move their lives without abuse and for their families to move forward. And then I also want to make sure that people never get kicked out of their homes, and that if there's an eviction that's being filed, we have a way to make sure that to get the landlord and the tenant together in the same room, even after this CARES money is no longer available, to say you don't want to put a family out in somewhere where they can't stay. And so the other item that is really, really important is I look at a system that we have called the Manufactured Housing Division. So if you look at manufactured housing and you don't call them trailers, but you create these communities using manufactured housing, you can get a 4-bedroom house, you can get it with a living room, a dining room, something much better than if you are using brick and mortar. And we can give it to these families so they can feel really good about where they're living, create these communities. What we do need to make sure is that there are things surrounding these communities like coffee shops and bookstores, and just because you have no money doesn't mean that you should have to live in less than what would be acceptable living surroundings. So those are the types of things that I'm working at in my law center to make sure that we are raising the well-being, particularly of children and of women when they want to leave a domestic violence situation.
Well, you know, our time's just about up, but I hope you get all these things through. We need you in that legislature, and believe me, you've got some backing.
Well, that's good to know. I am happy, and I do
That's
believe
how,
that.
that's how I found you.
Oh, well, thank you.
I had a couple of people said, don't get me, get Representative Herndon.
Well, it's my pleasure to serve the people in the state of New Mexico and to make sure that they are living in a safe, comfortable environment and that they get to live the life that they want to live. And that's what I hope to have happen.
Okay. Representative, thank you so much for your work and for being on our show today. It's been a real pleasure meeting you.
It's been a pleasure meeting
I
you.
might even be at your hearings.
All right, I love that. I would love for you to be there and to say some wonderful words of wisdom.
I would, absolutely. And Santa Fe, thank you for tuning in with Living Santa Fe and Representative Pamela Herndon. Hello Santa Fe, we're back again with our three-part series on reform, legislative reform, on gun reform and other issues that we've encountered lately. My next guest is a good friend of mine, Kat McCarty. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for the invitation.
41 years in the education
Yes.
business. How'd you get into that and why did you go into education?
Young children in the ski area would just really touch my heart and make comments like, we would love to have you be our teacher at school. And those words inspired me to follow through with education. And that's now 41 years ago.
41 years. You have actually become a second mother to many of these children. They're still coming back to you, and they're in their 20s.
And in their 40s.
And in their 40s. How do you get so attached to kids?
I am always realizing the gift of being able to work with people's children and grandchildren, friends and family, and children are such an amazing gift. And I really feel it's a privilege to work with children in many capacities. And I'm honored to be able to do that and to be trusted with the care of children and their education.
I've heard so many teachers since the Uvalde massacre. A lot of things being pushed on teachers now. You buy your own supplies. You don't get paid big bucks. And yet kids are getting slaughtered in their classrooms. What's your opinion on being a protector of kids with a gun in your hand?
Well, I don't imagine being a protector of children with a gun in my hand, but I do have a strong feeling about working with the community, with professionals who are trained to use those guns and can safely make sure that people are free from fear and free from violence and free from other types of scourges that really inhibit the freedoms that we all want to enjoy in this country. I don't imagine myself with a gun.
No,
No, because I
don't.
can't keep my eyes open with a gun. You know, I go and hold a gun and, you know, and I always shut my eyes. I always look away. I can't hit a target for anything. You don't want a gun in my hands. And that's when I've tried to be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear so many teachers say that they don't think they should have that responsibility with what else they have to do. They don't think they should have the responsibility of a gun.
That's my opinion as well.
Okay, you work with a lot of kids. Have you seen red flags?
I have,
You have.
yes.
Tell me some of them.
It's, well, there's a lot of confidentiality with working
I
with
know.
kids.
I don't want any names.
As is the case with medical profession and whatnot. So I just want to say that there are times when we work closely with law enforcement to address issues that and concerns that come up,
And with parents.
and with parents as well.
Okay. We were talking the other day when I was visiting with you. It's young boys that are causing so many problems. What's the deal with young boys? Your opinion.
Well, I think that guns being used as toys is not ideal. I think guns are best used as tools and as weapons and honored as such, and not being given as a childhood plaything. Playthings are hard not to pick up and play with. I really believe that weapons need to be handled with a lot of respect and with people who have got the proper training to do so with great care and with great success in their use of the weapons. In terms of working with families that have children and or family members or friends that have access to weapons and intent to use them violently, that's a tremendously scary reality that we're facing. And it's very scary for teachers whose number one job is to keep children safe.
So teachers can intervene with the parents, law enforcement. What about medical doctors? If you see something in a child that you feel is a mental problem, have you ever talked to a doctor or informed a doctor of a problem that you might see coming up?
Working with the medical community, I think, is really valuable, and especially in counseling and psychology and other resources that help families and children get tools to cope. And a lot of coping skills and strategies are very effective. It's one of those things that you can't insist anybody get medical treatment, nor can you have a conversation about somebody's potential or need for medical treatment. That has to be done by a family and a family member and authorization. And it's very tricky to get everyone to authorize the communication just between medical personnel, psychologists and counselors and teachers. That's also very difficult to get. But that authorization is required to get the information out and to do something effective with the information. So there's a lot of loopholes that keep honest people from doing an honest day's work.
Okay. Education has been in a real funk lately. First of all, you have COVID. COVID slammed the education. I mean, it really hurt, I think. Kids were home, virtual learning, I don't know. I'm not a teacher. I don't know whether that helps. What is your take on this? I mean, we had a bad situation with COVID.
Well, ironically, we didn't have any school shootings during COVID either.
That's right.
So it's a double-edged sword. I really have to say, when you've got a situation that is dire and some big sweeping moves are made for the safety of everyone, sometimes people, the drawbacks and the benefits have to be weighed, and sometimes the drawbacks are significantly more than the benefits. But That being said, we were open and in person. We had very few times where we were required to be completely shut down for, I'm telling you, maybe, a couple of weeks altogether. So we stayed open, we stayed in person, but some families preferred to have their children stay at home. So we offered that option as well. And we got better at it. And the children did show up, and they did actually do well, and the parents were actually really pleased. And so something that I thought we would never do and that would never be effective turned out to be somewhat effective and somewhat successful. I don't think we were all prepared for it. I don't think the research had been done to do something like that effectively. We literally turned a corner, saw an issue, and jumped into it without a lot of preparation. And I think that may be the way we go in the future because of the safety issues that teachers are facing, and children and schools, and concerns about families. I mean, it's really hard for families to think about sending their children to school every day when their children have to spend so much of their time doing these drills. And a mass shooter drill is now part of the requirement. I mean, children have to do these types of drills, not just fire drills and earthquake drills, but mass shooter drills. And that's got to be affecting the psyche of the families, the children, the community, our nation.
Absolutely. They're getting like little prisons.
And that's the other thing, is that they're talking about one way in, and there's just little slots in the door where you've got just a little bit of eye view and no windows at all, no natural light. And that doesn't seem to me to be a really healthy environment for a child to be learning the 3 R's in.
Yes. Reading, writing, and arithmetic.
That's right. The other part is that you get these little prisons where there are no windows and there's no way to have a mass shooter come in. But remember that a big part of why children go to school is for recess, and that's done outside.
That's right.
And there's that whole playground full of kids, and there's a lot of opportunity right then.
Soft targets.
And the soft targets, we're all soft targets. United States was built on the ability to meet freely and enjoy one another's good company, and to go to restaurants, and to go to the theater, and to go to musical festivals. I mean, we are a community of soft targets.
Well, this is part of the life now for all of us. And I know teachers have contributed so much. I had first 9 years of my life, I was with the nuns. And I'll tell you, I didn't get away with much because they were on the phone to my mom. And that was the end of my little mischief things that I'd get into, and even going to Santa Fe High School. We had great teachers. We had freedom, total freedom. The world is changing, and the teachers are going to be different.
And teaching will be different.
And teaching will be different.
And now that we've had a taste of online learning, I've got a feeling it's going to become more predominant, and I think it's going to be a safer alternative than what we can possibly dream up with all of these window-free concrete buildings that we're asking children to go learn in.
One last question.
Yes.
Drugs and alcohol.
Okay, good. Well, let's just get right on to tobacco, alcohol,
Okay.
drugs, and firearms. So we've all agreed that alcohol needs to be consumed by adults age 21 and over. 2019, tobacco was included in that. 21 years old and older, you can make that choice. Now we've got the recreational or medicinal marijuana, 21 or older. And I would like to recommend 21 or older is considered adult, and I would like to recommend that for guns and gun safety and gun ownership. That's my
Okay,
recommendation.
well, I like your recommendation. Kat, thank you for being on our show today and giving it from a teacher's point of view,
From
someone,
one teacher's point of view,
Yeah.
one perspective.
and it's 41 years of education.
And I still love it.
And you
I
still
love
doing it, and you still love it, and you love the kids. I know you do. I've seen you with them. You do such a good job. And thank you. Hello, Santa Fe, and welcome back to our three-part series on matters that are happening in our country. My friend Jane is here. She's a victim of abuse. We're not going to go into a lot of that, but her abuse started when you were a child.
Yes, yes. My earliest memories are from 2 until when I was able to stop it at 14, and it included 11 different family members and friends and family, but caretakers, loved ones, beloveds. And that was the beginning of the journey to let a small shattered soul start to heal.
Okay. You've been in therapy for,
I've been working on my transformation. I call it healing, transformation, and transcendence, because I'm just not and never have been. I've been very blessed to be somebody who decided I was going to move forward and be of great use in this life. And I started therapy and getting help when I was 19 years old. I'm 61, and I continue to work on my mental wellness, my mind, body, spirit, fitness and wellness, and most of all my spiritual wellness, because without that I can't do any of the others.
you were raised in the Catholic Church in
Was.
Boston.
Yeah,
Big-
outside of Boston.
Okay, big Catholic population over there.
Yep.
How has your faith helped you? Now, I know it's changed over the years, just like we all change.
Sure.
We're raised a certain way, but then as we get older, I like this or I like that, and I'm not so gun come on this. So I know you've changed in your feelings, but how has that background helped you?
Well, I took with me beautiful parts of my Christian Catholic upbringing, and I believe that devotion to a higher power and that devotion to God and to Jesus and to the Divine Mother, which is my greatest love, carried me through everything. I felt very protected. I felt like there was something more important, more powerful, more loving than what the human world could provide. And even in the greatest of trauma, I believed that. I believed that. Now, I know that's a blessing. I know not everybody gets that. I've also walked for the last over 40 years on a spiritual path of devotion, learning about all different types of religion, all different types of spiritual paths, because I sit here today at 61 with everything going on in the world, and listening to the earlier segments about gun reform and the disconnection in our world is everything from religion to politics to the color of our skin, our economic status. Everything has gotten to a place of, we talked about it one day, about sex, money, power became our power, became our God. Not all of ours, but too many of ours. And so after many years in business, working on mission-based businesses, trying to bring cultures of love and care, speaking about love in business freely, divine love in business. If we don't have it, we don't have the right core, we don't have the right essence, we don't come from where we need to come from. And that's, I think, the greatest thing, that my Christianity, my love of God and Jesus and Buddha, and I believe it's all one. I know not everyone does, and I respect that. But I believe it's all one. And if I believe that being a visionary who's been blessed with visions of all kinds, that if we could see each other as brothers and sisters, not the brothers and sisters I was born with, which I adore them, but you and me, we're sisters. I'm sisters and brothers with everyone, and if we could come back to those teachings and not have religious divide and all of the divides that extract us from one another, that disconnect us, that are causing the collective heartbreak that we just spoke about earlier in this world, globally, not just in the United States, globally. We have a chance. We have a huge chance. There's so much hope if we can push forward in that way.
Now, you've been an entrepreneur. You've run businesses.
Yes, I have.
How many?
5.
5.
5 in over a 40-year period.
And they're mission-based.
They all had a mission of making something in the world better. Taking, like for instance, my daughter, I had twins, she had terrible food allergies, and she's 22 now, but at the time she was born, she had anaphylaxis. By the time she was 10 years old, 3 times she had faced death, and she had serious issues from that. But she also didn't trust food, and there was no food for her. That was one of the companies I started, was an allergy-based food company with my family, with my husband, with my daughters, with my community in Salida, Colorado. Everyone came together to bring this food forward for the safety and well-being of the children. It was very difficult to grow a brand. It's in the hands of a bigger private equity firm now, but anything that I have chosen in my life to do that had for-profit or not-for-profit had a mission to it, of course.
Okay. You talked a lot about forgiveness. How could you forgive abuse?
I did it for myself and for you. I did it for my brothers and sisters. I will always come back to, I am a sacred sister of you and you are a sacred sister of me. And it doesn't matter what you believe, what politics you believe, what color your skin is, or what religion that you follow, I respect that. And if I didn't forgive my abusers, I would not have the heart to love that way. Now, it doesn't mean I have to go to dinner. Doesn't mean I have to take a walk. Forgiveness does not condone behavior. I will always fight for children to be safe. I am fierce about it. I'm fierce. I'm not. I was telling your earlier guest that I wrote a song after Sandy Hook 10 years ago. My daughter's a songwriter. I wrote a song. It wasn't great, but it was from my heart. It was from the collective mother heartache at that moment. And I took it out 2 weeks ago because I wanted my daughter to rewrite it and hopefully maybe be able to do something that could give back to gun safety, because we're coming up on the 10th anniversary.
Sure.
December 14th, I think.
That's
so
right.
I took the song out, and 3 days later, Uvalde happened. And I thought to myself, I have to do more. I have to show up as a mother, as the collective mother heart. And I believe that collective mother heart, this is just my own feeling, is in every single one of us, whether we have children or whether we are a man, but we have that beautiful sacred part of us, that nurturing safety part of us. And we have to come together. All the reform has to take place. All the changes have to take place. But there are many spiritual wisdom teachers who have said through all the years that the change begins with us. And we're not in a good place with each other as brothers and sisters. It's all about division and not about connection.
Abuse is a violent act.
Clearly.
It's a soft target. This is what's happening. These are soft targets. You mentioned all the different shootings. I went back all the way to Columbine in 1999 in Colorado, Virginia Tech in 2007, Sandy Hook 2012, Umpqua Community College 2015, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas 2018, Santa Fe High School, Houston, Texas 2018, and May 2022, Robb Elementary in Uvalde. Those are just the schools. That doesn't include the soft targets in the grocery stores, in churches. And abuse is a violent act. And don't make it look any different. It is a violent act to
Without-
children.
Yes.
And to come out of it, it's taken you how many years?
Oh, it's a journey. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. It is a lifelong commitment. I'm a little better each day. And I'm very well at this point. I'm so grateful to be able to say that and humbled. But I had a lot of helpers. I had a lot of help. I had a lot of love. And that's what any child who has faced any type of trauma or mother in a domestic relationship that has been abusive or any type of abuse is it's a commitment from all of us to be real brothers and sisters to each other and make sure people get the help they need. I was so fortunate to get it. I don't know how that happened. I guess the only thing I can believe is that I was supposed to be here with you and with anyone else who might need a real friend to know you can come through. You will come through. You will.
Now you have an unusual desire, and I'm going to talk about it
Okay.
because I can't see how you're going to do it,
Okay.
but it's a damn good idea. Happens here in New Mexico. A gentleman by the name of Jeffrey Epstein and his sidekick, Ghislaine. She is now serving 30 years in prison. He has committed suicide.
Yes.
It was child abuse with young girls, trafficking young girls right here in New Mexico
Right.
at the Zorro Ranch. Now you have a great idea. You would like to see this ranch changed and cleaned. How do you do that? What's your idea?
Well, we talked about to heal, transform, and transcend anything takes collective love and collective healing. And there's a very strong and beautiful, I use the word brilliance as heart and mind combined. I'm talking about women of extraordinary heart coming together to put a program together. We've started a not-for-profit called Rose Gold, and that is the roses that we all bring to each other, show love, and a new way to look at gold, which is money, which has been very extractive, and capitalism systems, you know, they're breaking. There's part of it, like everything, both and. Some is beautiful and good, and some doesn't work. And we look at this ranch as a place. Well, there were some spiritual teachers who went to Germany, and people couldn't understand why they were going there. But they gave the answer, which was very simple. We need to heal this soil. Mother Earth is a part of our divine love, and we believe that we will take this ranch, heal, transform, and transcend it, and have a place where people can come and do the same, but to be on a piece of land that the holy ancient wounds that started long before Jeffrey Epstein, because it was taken, will be transformed and healed through the only way we can do it, which is through love and healing. And we believe that that can happen there.
You're talking about a 27 million.
Yeah. Oh, no, this is a very, very big project, but it is called the Matri Sanctuary. And Matri is the word that holds the love of the mother in each one of us and all the forms of the Holy Mother, the Divine Mother, the Blessed Mother. It combines it into a communion in our hearts. And we believe that on this place, on this soil, with the love and the brilliance that will be brought there, many, many people will be able to find a way to go back out into life and be really useful.
Now, you've mentioned help from people such as Melinda Gates, maybe?
Well, we have not been able to get to some of the beautiful philanthropists that are out there. Mackenzie, Melinda, I mean, there are many
Oprah.
that have been blessed
Yes.
with great fortune, but also great hearts. And when we are ready, we'll be in front of them. I feel it. I believe that. We will get the help we need. Helpers are everywhere. My mom used to say, go find the helpers
Yeah.
and be one. And
Well, that's a big project.
it's a big project, and I
you
would
know-
never be able to do it alone. It would be an incredible collective of women from around, really, from around the globe that come together, that believe that a container, one place for some of this work to be done, for some of the greatest hearts and minds to come together, will be really effective, and we can help not only on a social level, on an environmental level, but on a governance level.
Yeah. There are many women today that are doing this. They're coming up with programs for women. It's a strong movement right now, not only in politics. I see it in politics all the time, but in just regular living.
Yeah. I love men. I love everyone. We need women right now. Our world needs the heart and soul and nourishment of the empowerment of women collectively together. There's no question that this is happening. There's no stopping it. But we need our men, because otherwise, in the end, there will be an imbalance of harmony and, there will be an imbalance of harmony and peace again. And we don't want that. We want unconditional equality.
Jane, thank you. Inspirational words. I wish you the best of luck on this project.
Thank you.
And I know you're working on it, and you're contacting the right people,
Sure.
and you know them,
Right. Well,
and they know you.
and we're having a lot of faith about it.
Yes.
Because if it's going to be of betterment to all, then it will happen. And we're not going to force or jeopardize any of the goodness of the project. It will just have to be in divine timing, I think.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
Much love.
Thank you, Santa Fe. And I hope you enjoyed this series that we've done.